Welcome to the second session of the main event of the Dutch Blockchain Week. Little reminder also for those of you who just joined us, you can scan this QR code. I'm going to stand here for a few seconds. If you want to engage in the conversation that we have here on stage, you can leave your questions in Mentimeter and they will pop up here. And if time is permitting me and the questions are also decent enough that I actually am thinking that I can ask them to you as a speaker, then we'll incorporate them in the dialogue. Yes, I will meanwhile get some notifications here as well. So in the second session, we will...
That's me.
I was still working on the introduction. All right, ladies and gentlemen, in this second session, we will nosedive deep into cryptos and decentralized finance. And yeah, for this first conversation, I'm really interested. Bert Slagter is joining us. Bert is author, analyst, writer, and host. And yeah, it's just impossible to describe all the positive impact that he has on this Dutch crypto ecosystem. He told me actually that even his little children are now receiving the pocket money in Bitcoin.
If
There's
they want.
no way back.
If they want.
Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
Now, let me start with, you wrote a book together with your brother. Ons geld is stuk, our money is broken. After all the things that happened, also especially with FTX. There's so much trust in FTX. Is crypto now also broken?
Yeah, it seems like it. The Economist had this famous cover with crypto's downfall. And from the outside, it looks like crypto is dead for the fourth time, I think. And yeah, well, actually FTX is also one of the part of the fallout of the Luna and Terra crash.
Yeah.
So what started this summer is still avalanching through the sector, and it's important to make the distinction between the crypto companies and crypto. So your question was, is crypto dead or is crypto broken? Is decentralized technology broken? I don't think so. I think most blockchains just functioned well. No outage, 24/7 uptime, 100% uptime. Everything worked as it should.
Except for Solana and...
Well, even Solana. I mean, the Solana token took a nosedive, but the blockchain functioned just as well as before, which means restarts every few weeks. But that's another story. But it's quite interesting that in these very turbulent times, even the most complex decentralized finance contracts still worked.
Yeah.
So it's important to make the distinction between the protocols, the decentralized technology, and the companies that build their services around it. Yeah. And some of these companies, they did bad things, fraudulent things, or just took too much risk.
Yeah, what will happen next after FTX, of course, right? I mean,
yeah, now Genesis is under investigation.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think what happens in bear markets is that everything that can burn will burn. Yeah, and what we'll see is that there are quite some companies that are actually operating with integrity and full reserve and are aiming for regulation, so they will survive, not only survive but thrive.
Yeah. Burn. What will burn will burn.
Yeah. So it's the metaphor from Nassim Taleb. He says the dead wood in the forest needs to burn down every couple of years, and if you prevent the fires from happening, then more firewood will accumulate, and after 10, 20 something years, an inferno will happen. So it's necessary for an emerging industry to have the dead wood being burned every few years. Yeah.
Beautiful comparison. Yeah. I thought you, because you were quite positive about the crypto sector in general, I thought you were a maximalist. You were like a Bitcoin maximalist, Bitcoin only.
No, I'm a decentralization maximalist.
Okay.
So for me, the most important thing of this innovation is decentralization, which means that for the first time in history, it's possible to transfer digital property from one to another without depending on centralized authorities like tech companies or banks or governments, which can cease to exist, become bankrupt or become corrupt. And that's important in a future that is borderless and digital. And this decentralization is what it's all about. Without decentralization, we're just reinventing old things with a new marketing term like blockchain. We call them dinos, decentralized in name only. So decentralization. So in the crypto space, including Web3 and Metaverse and all those very interesting fields to study, not many things are really decentralized or aiming for decentralization. And that's where I draw the line. Everything that's trying to disrupt existing structures or ways of working or interacting by decentralization, that's what I find interesting. So I'm a decentralization maximalist.
Nice. Yeah, and you're working on so many interesting projects. There's a lot to unpack here. Let me start with the Bitcoin conference first. The big global Bitcoin conference that took place here in Amsterdam. You also worked on the sidelines, organizing this,
behind the scenes. Yeah.
Behind the scenes on this event. What were like the most profound ideas that you heard during this conference? A
lot of things, and for me, the conference was. I am not a typical visitor. I know a lot of people in the sector, a lot of people in the community, so it was just a warm bath of meeting people. I think for the average visitor, it was a weird experience because it's the organizers are the American company BTC Inc. that's behind BitcoinMagazine.com, and they have a really American way of doing things, and they wanted to bring the American perspective on things, which is about self-sovereignty and freedom, and those are things that we like, but the way they express them are different than we think in Europe. So we hoped to get a little bit of the more progressive view on things, like we have to do things together in a society. Those kind of thoughts. It's hard to change the whole team of people that do things that have been doing things in a specific way for years. So what I experienced is that innovation will come from the open source people and not from the big names on the stage. They're just repeating their marketing-y lines that brought them the millions of followers. And the magic happened in the open source stage and the workshop stage and maybe the hallway track where people just met and discussed new technological things. So that's one. And the other thing is that the American view is all about independence and freedom and a little bit of libertarian view of the world. But where Bitcoin is actually used is by people all around the world that see that Bitcoin is a better technology than the alternatives that they have. For example, people that are escaping from a war zone, war situation like Ukraine and Russia, or people in certain African countries where the currency is actually failing, Lebanon, for example. And those people, they evaluate their options, and for them, in that specific situation, Bitcoin is just better than the alternatives. Yeah. And that's a profound idea, I think.
A profound impact, for sure. I mean, tomorrow we have in a virtual event, we have the guys from Galloway who made the entire infrastructure for El Salvador, right? So they will speak about all the implementations and all the things that they see now happening in El Salvador. I work myself with the Central African government, Central African Republic government on their, I mean, they're now also implementing Bitcoin. And it's really interesting to see like what it really does, what kind of impact it has on these countries, on the people that finally have the financial infrastructure that they didn't have before. They can finally save money, they can easily pay to each other for sure. But that's in the development countries. You just mentioned like, you know, freedom, we saw the libertarian view from the US, but when we look here in the EU, we see quite some votes in favor of banning, for example, the proof of work mechanism. I even read that now from the European Union, there's these thoughts where they say like, yeah, maybe you tell us as EU that it's impossible to make the technology, you know, being used without, being operated without this proof of work technology, but that's the same argument that we got from the big tech a couple of years ago when it came to implementing privacy features. So do you still see, you know, maybe a future where, for example, proof of work will be banned?
No, I don't think they will make it outright illegal. At least it doesn't look that way. No. But they will probably constrain Bitcoin mining in Europe to sustainable forms of energy, for example. There will be a discussion about it because, and it's only fair to assess the externalities of every technology. So what are the externalities of Bitcoin mining? Like noise and heat and e-waste and carbon usage, all those things, we have to evaluate it and see how does it impact. Maybe another externality is the stability or instability of the energy grid. And then the question becomes, can Bitcoin mining only be part of the problem or also part of the solution? And that's a fair question. And I think that it can also be part of the solution, because Bitcoin miners are very special energy consumers. They're not constricted to a specific place or time. They're very flexible. They can change the load within seconds. So they might be part of the solution as well. So I'm really looking forward to discussions about this, if only it happens in a fair way. Fair way, yeah.
For sure. I mean, we see some cool developments here in the Netherlands. I mean, you are also part of the CryptoCast, being our podcast for cryptos, and we heard some really cool ideas about Bitcoin mining being used in greenhouses here in the Netherlands.
It's not just an idea, it's being used that way.
And even flowers are being grown with Bitcoin mining, and like the energy grid is becoming more stable.
Load balancing by using Bitcoin mining,
So, but still, I think it will go more into the direction of like only, for example, green energy that can be used for Bitcoin mining, or
and not just using renewable energy, because you can also say that if a Bitcoin miner uses renewable energy, someone else cannot. So it's even the bar will even be higher than that.
Yeah. I just fiercely mentioned fair, if it's done fair. And one of the things that is not really being done fair, what I hear quite often from you in your podcast, in your articles, is currently the debate about the rules and the regulations around cryptocurrencies, right? For example, also when it comes to the Dutch National Bank, you have quite some opinions about that. And yesterday, actually, you recorded a podcast about the Dutch National Bank and their stance towards cryptos. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
How was this? I mean, was there somebody from the Dutch National Bank or?
No, we asked them. They didn't want to. Oh, they only wanted to be in the on the radio and the podcast if they were allowed to just send. They didn't want any questions or any co-host or anything like that.
And you explained them it's a podcast?
Yeah, well, it's I didn't do it. The Daniel Mol did it. He's in the editor, and Herbert Blankenstein. Yeah. So we found Milan de Rede, and he's a special guy. He's a crypto expert. He is working. He's been studying it since 2012 or something. I was 19 years old back then. He studied finance and worked at DNB for a few years. Was one in the talent group there, and he was asked to be the crypto lead there. Oh. He did it for a few months and then he left because he found out that there is not an honest search for what it is. They already have the conclusion and they're looking for arguments selectively to work towards that conclusion.
They literally published a report lately that cryptos cannot be used for payments and it's useless. Point. You know, that was there.
Yeah. I have a few quotes from the study. It said it's a policy note. Crypto cannot be used for payments. They're unsuitable. In Dutch, niet geschikt. So I see unsuitable. That little checkbox with unsuitable. And that's interesting. So unsuitable for what? So I can I take the time for some quotes? It's interesting because the study itself says something different. It's interesting. The first time I read the report, I thought, hey, they're doing some very on-point observations. So I was quite positive until I read the conclusion and then the press release and then the interviews. But okay, let's take it from here. Let's see, what do I take? Oh yeah. DNB, DNB is our central bank. DNB does not consider unbacked cryptos to be money. Okay, so unbacked cryptos.
What is an unbacked crypto?
Yeah, that's everything except stablecoins. So that are crypto assets that are not backed by anything, like Bitcoin or Ether or Cardano or whatever. Yeah. So, but further on in the report, they say money is anything people decide to accept as payment, use as saving, and use to communicate value. I thought that's interesting. So the definition of money is anything that people decide to accept. Okay, interesting. Okay. They note that DLT, that's what they call the underlying technology like blockchain and decentralized, they summarize it in DLT, has been a major innovation since it facilitates the storage and transfer of tokenized assets without a trusted central intermediary. Wow, cool. Crypto assets can be seen as an attempt to rebuild monetary and financial infrastructures from scratch. Okay, can live with that. And then they talk about the internet and how we missed the ability to transfer digital objects from one person to another, from peer to peer. And they say that crypto assets can be used that way, and they say this historical context illustrates the significance of the innovation of crypto assets. In principle, crypto assets can be used by anyone around the world without a trusted intermediary and are therefore seen by some as the ultimate fulfillment of the promise of the internet. Okay. Other observations they do, crypto assets are difficult to seize by corrupt governments, and they quote Navalny, for example, the opposition in Russia. Crypto asset infrastructures are available 24/7, as computers all over the world work together to maintain the platform, increasing robustness, no single point of failure, and limiting any single user from gaining dominant market power. Oh. Okay, they talk about the payment infrastructures that work well nationally, but are not interoperable. Okay, so remittances are expensive, all those things. They even say in emerging markets, okay, here they are, emerging markets, crypto assets are used more often to send remittances, preserve savings in time of fiat currency volatility, or other needs specific to their country.
But Bert, I'm thinking two things. We're going to discuss CBDCs after this. But when we look to this report, right, the Dutch National Bank, sure, they write this. And
no, but this is all positive, right?
Yeah, but there's also quite some conflicting views, right? I mean, about cryptos, how it should be used, how it should not be used. When you look from their points of stance, right? I mean, we have the MiCAR coming, right? The crypto regulation from the EU that basically, well, tells us like cryptos are okay to use, and there's just strict regulations. This will also be implemented in the Netherlands. Does this opinion from the Dutch National Bank matter? Does this report really matter?
Yeah, it does, because the Dutch central bank and, for example, the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve and the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, they are seen as objective knowledge institutes. What these institutes say is true, is being regarded as true by politicians, by other institutes, by media. They're just quoted. DNB says this and this. So it is important what DNB says. So what I expect from them is a neutral, unbiased view. Yeah. And they can have their points of view and their opinions and make their choices. But if they write a report and present it as a study, it should be unbiased. Yeah. The interesting thing, I'd like to finish the lines of quotes. Yes. So they see all kinds of advantages of decentralized technology. That's actually what they demonstrate in 30 pages. They also see that for decentralization to work, you need a native coin bound to the blockchain or the DLT. They think stablecoins are more interesting because they are not volatile, but they also say that stablecoins can only work as a token on top of a decentralized network. So they know in order to have what they want, stablecoins, they think that's nice. They also need the underlying infrastructure. In order to have this infrastructure, they need to have these native currencies like Bitcoin or Ether. So how can the conclusion be? Unbacked crypto is worthless. Oh. And that's the problem. Yeah. So and the thing is, if you read the report from page 1 to page 50, you get a certain impression, but almost no one reads the report. They only read the headlines, and that's what I discussed with Milan in CryptoCast. I think that's a problem. I think that we should have debate based on all the arguments in favor and against. Sure,
but
but balanced.
Sure, but I mean, you had Milan, former head of crypto of the Dutch National Bank, yesterday in the podcast, which is available at Spotify. But what is he telling you? What is he telling you? Are there just people at the Dutch National Bank that just don't have a clue how blockchain works? Are they just having a very negative stance and it's just impossible to give them a little bit more a positive attitude? Or
there are many people at the Dutch National Bank that of central bank that are open and just interested in everything that happens. But as soon as people educate themselves, or they get some expertise, and they start writing about it in a balanced way, they are asked to change conclusion to the favorable outcome from the higher echelons. They just say this is what ECB says, and this is what we have to conclude.
Is this also this kind of like way how they communicate their opinion about crypto? Is this also why you are a little skeptic about the EBC, the European Central Bank, for working on their own CBDC?
Oh no, that's a totally different reason. I think the ECB will develop a central bank digital currency. It's called the digital euro in the Eurozone. And I really can imagine a very, very nice version of the digital euro with very favorable properties. But I don't think we're going to get it, because so many parties have interests, like banks, commercial banks, and central banks, police. And there are geopolitical interests, and of course the interests of the civilians, say the households and the companies, but they don't match these interests. So what we get is a compromise, and this compromise probably, what we will probably get, we don't know yet, of course, because this project will take another 4 years, but we will probably get what it moves in the direction of a compromise that's just not interesting for people to use. And if for most people, it's very, very simple. People use the technology that's better than the alternatives that they have. And in the Netherlands, we have a very, very good payment infrastructure.
Ideal,
Tiki, instant payments, Apple Pay. So for most people, why would they use a CBDC? It will be limited to a few thousand euros, so they cannot save in it.
Well, that's the design part still, right?
Yeah,
they want to prevent the bank run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I'm skeptical about the CBDC. And the thing is, if it's probably not going to be very interesting for the Dutch, the European citizens. So why? There's not much upside, but there is some big downside. Yeah. Because the CBDC can be used in all kinds of dystopian ways. It will not be used in a dystopian way when it is introduced, because the current governments are pretty benign in Europe, but that can change in the future. So the thing is, it's just like nuclear weapons. The fact that you are capable of making something doesn't mean you have to make it. Yeah. So that's the interesting conversation we should have, I think, about CBDC.
That we already had, right? Maybe in 100 years, when we live in this big DAO in the metaverse, then we maybe can use it here in Europe. Before we continue, we have some questions from the audience.
Yeah, sure.
Let me start with the first one. How do you reconcile these two beliefs, decentralization and regulation, being necessary for the parties that will thrive?
Very good question. So I think decentralization is the peer-to-peer technology. Mm-hmm. at this point in time, it's a very immature technology. So it's very hard to use a wallet. You can lose your keys. User experience is not that good. It's not that cheap. I did some Ethereum interactions this summer, and it cost me $80 to do a swap or something. So those are all things that will be solved.
Should be solved.
That should be solved, but they will be solved. The thing is, if it's technically possible, it will be solved. So the only question is, if you have some obstacle, is it technically impossible or not? And if the answer is no, it's not impossible, then it will be solved sometime, anytime, 5 years, 10 years from now. But at this moment, there are a lot of obstacles in the technology. And all these centralized service providers, all the centralized parties like FTX or Coinbase, they solve these obstacles by making it easier or cheaper or faster or more user friendly. But I think that's something that's necessary now, and hopefully in the future becomes less necessary. So at this moment, most people will use a custodian or a central party to store their crypto assets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and there are other centralized companies. The discussion, I think Aragorn mentioned it. Only Bitcoin is decentralized. Yeah, well, I think the Ethereum ecosystem is really trying to become more decentralized, but there are some things at this moment, like Infura, where things are centralized.
What is Infura?
Yeah, Infura. That's it's a company that provides, for example, I think MetaMask also uses it with the data from the blockchain. So you have some central points of failure, and they need to be eliminated to really become decentralized. But we're in the very, very early stages. So that's how I allow them to coexist at this point in time. Yeah.
Early stage, and we also see that when it comes to regulation. We already briefly discussed the regulation when it comes, for example, to NFTs in the previous session. When you look to the Dutch regulatory landscape when it comes to crypto, do you think the regulatory landscape is now more in favor or against cryptos?
Currently, there's not so much regulation. It's only the anti-money laundering regulatory things. But what's coming is the MiCA, the marketing crypto assets regulation that will regulate, for example, the companies. That's a very important part of it, and I think it's a good thing. But also consumer protection and the emitters of new assets. I think in general the European approach is it's okay. Yeah. It could have been worse. Yeah,
could be worse. Maybe when they start to,
we have conflicting interests. We also have the interest as a society to prevent criminals from doing money laundering, and we have to protect some of the people from taking advantage of. So, and we want decentralized technology to have a chance to grow from its infancy to maturity. So there's no right answer, I think, and I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, that's what this usually is. I worked with the Dutch National Police, and they told me like the challenge here is that usually criminals are the biggest innovators. Now, if you see always the newest technologies, they're being used by criminals.
Infinite money, and they don't have to obey the rules. So
can just practice and try out all the new technology. You see it now with like the metaverse, where Interpol also opened an office where already quite some crime is being committed. So I can also see from the Dutch point of view that they are, you know, like a little have mixed feelings about crypto?
Specifically in the Netherlands, we are a drugs hub for Europe. So the Dutch police and justice, they have a harder task than most of their European counterparties.
Yeah, but I literally heard from them that before they were like, you know, running into a house, and then before they were finding all these bags full of money. Yeah. But now they just find a ledger, you know, a guy with a ledger around his neck. Yeah. Sometimes they hide them or they hide the public keys. And
yeah, but the thing is also the criminals think they are safe using crypto, and many times they are still being caught. Yeah. So time will tell.
Time will tell. Yeah. We have another question. Some technical questions about Bitcoin. Why not bring a complementary digital token besides the digital euro instead of a stable coin?
I don't exactly understand what the question means. Maybe a complementary digital token. Yeah, if that means that the ECB will issue a digital euro token on top of Ethereum, I'm all in favor. But that's a special kind of stablecoin, actually.
I think they're already testing it out also in Estland, where they are working on this digital euro, working with Ethereum network, for example.
Yeah, but not for digital euro. No. The track they're currently on is heavily permissioned, fully identified users, with all kinds of limits on the amounts and the transaction volumes and all those kind of things. So I don't see it happening, but it would be it would be very interesting. The United States is actually considering this route to not build a CBDC, but bring all stablecoin companies under heavy regulation, even possibly give them a bank account at the treasury, and then have the digital dollar be the world's digital currency.
Reserve.
Yeah, so it would make the lifespan of the dollar longer, because the dollar is on its way down currently. The percentage of world trade being settled in dollars is falling already for 10, 20 years. Yeah. So they're also looking for how to extend the life of the dollar, and this could be one of the ways. They would leapfrog all other countries that are studying and researching CBDCs, and it takes forever to build it, and then it will take forever to make them interoperable. Yeah. Because a CBDC, you can see a CBDC as an intranet. It's just for your monetary space, like the Eurozone, or in Sweden, only Sweden. To use the digital euro from the outside of Europe, you have to be onboarded in our intranet. Yeah. It'll take forever, man. So I think it's an interesting direction for the United States to take.
Oh, in the end, what I read when I was reading about CBDCs is that China, they already launched their CBDC. It's operational. It's working.
It's not being used.
It's not being used?
No, they had 200 and something million users and 200 and something million transactions. So everybody just downloaded the wallet, took their money, and ran.
The money they got when they created the money.
Yeah. The airdrop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Little stimulants to actually, just like El Salvador, right?
Yeah, and just like the other one's Nigeria. I don't know. There's one other country that already launched it. I think 2%. Active users or something. So it's hard to launch a CBDC.
Yeah, it's hard because, and I think you already mentioned it, I mean, if you look to China, well, I've been there many times. Like it's just so easy to pay with the WeChat Pay and that kind of stuff. And it's the same here in Europe. We have Ideal, we have Tiki.
Yeah, scan a QR and you're done. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, why should you join another network? Why should you use another method of payment?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, in China, their CBDC offers more privacy than the other money.
What?
So yeah, you can even do offline peer-to-peer transactions with it. So it's
Wow. Let me check if there's one more question from the audience. There's some technical questions here about the regulation. CBDC will be backed by gold or BTC. We don't know yet. I think we're just gonna close down this conversation with this million. Yeah. I mean, everybody can listen to you on the podcast. Of course. I'm really going to listen to one about DNB, the guy that left and told you all the bit he did inside.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Closing down with the last question, this $1 million question that everybody, of course, wants to know: when moon again?
When moon? Moon soon, of course. No, the thing is, I think the honest analysis is that we're in a bear market. And that means two things. I think the macroeconomic backdrop needs to change. It's a headwind currently. Financial conditions are tight and still becoming tighter. Money is expensive, and that's a problem for a space where the money will be made far out in the future. So it's not just the crypto space that is in a heavy bear market, for other innovative technologies as well. So that's one thing. And I think most probably in 6 to 9 months, in most countries, it will become evident that there's a big recession going on, or at least the economic growth has slowed down very much, and inflation will come down, and central banks will change their stance on the monetary policy and start easing the monetary policy. So that's one data point, and the other one is I think we'll need to go through the forest fires to clean the dead wood, and that takes time.
But I was hoping to get a little positive end to this conversation, wait, I'll repeat my question again.
The weak hands need to leave. I think it's cyclically a next bull market should start in 2024 or something around that. It would be a logical. Yeah. But that's life, man. Yeah.
All right.
So someone else already said it's bear markets are for building. So build.
I just said exactly. Bert Slagter, thank you so much for joining us.